Welcome back to an episode of Smooth Brain EDH. We get the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. We got another game of classic casual EDH for you all this week. So let's see what everyone brought to the table. First up is Seth playing Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter. This Simic deck is a control deck, hoping to interact with opponents at key points in the game to slow them down and build up his board state. Next up is Caden on the 13th Doctor with Yasmin Khan as the companion. This teamer deck is all about putting counters on creatures and then using the Doctor to untap them and gain tons of value. Third is Sam on Arna, Canaruned, Sky Captain. This Esper deck is focused around modified creatures, using Arna's trigger to double up counters, auras, and equipments on all of Sam's creatures. Last is Matt on Zur, Eternal Schemer. This Esper deck is all about enchantment creatures, with Zur supporting them by just slapping a bunch of keywords on them. About to hop right into the game. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to the channel. We have links to all of our social media pages, our free public Discord server, the Decklists, and our Patreon in the description. We are partnered with Dragon Shield. Check out our affiliate link in the description if you'd like to pick up any sleeves, deck boxes, or playmats, and use code SMOOTH5 at checkout for 5% off your order. Now, on to the gameplay.
It looks like Caden wins the die roll. He'll start off with Timber Crown Pathway and cast Llanowar Elves, then pass the turn to Sam, who just plays a tapped Rafine Tower and passes. Matt will play his Flooded Strand and fetch with it, and he says he's going to go find Undercity Sewers and surveil one, and he passes to Seth while searching, because Seth says he's going to do the same thing but with a Misty Rainforest, and he finds Hedge Maze. Matt's surveil will stay on top, and Seth puts Hullbreaker Horror into the yard. The turn is passed, and Caden will cast 3 visits. He'll also find a Hedge Maze and surveil. His will stay on top, then he'll play Rootbound Crag and pass to Sam, who plays an Underground Sea and casts Talisman of Hierarchy and then passes. Matt plays Polluted Delta and fetches again for a Surveil land, this time Shadowy Backstreet. This puts Swamp to the graveyard, and then the turn is passed to Seth, who plays an Island as land for turn. He'll use that to cast a Preordain. One Scry stays on top while the other goes on bottom, and then he'll draw that card. The turn is then passed to Caden, and he'll start off with Junktown as land for turn. He'll then tap for 4 and cast Yasmin Khan. Then he hits Seth for 1 and passes the turn to Sam, who will cast Lion Sash and then pass the turn, unfortunately missing a land drop. Now on Matt's turn, he'll play a tapped Prairie Stream, then cast Starfield Mystic and pass to Seth, who says Island Go. Now on Caden's turn, he'll cast the 13th Doctor. Then activate Yasmin Khan and exile a counterspell. That's not really something he's going to be able to use, so it'll stay in perma exile. He'll then play a Rejuvenating Springs as land for turn, then tap for 3 and cast Rishkar, Prima Renegade. ETB trigger. Yasmin and Llanowar Elves will each get a counter, and then Caden moves to his end step and untaps them. Now on Sam's turn, he'll play and fetch with a Polluted Delta for a Scrubland, and then he'll catch up on mana with a Solemn Simulacrum. This finds him an island, then he'll punch Seth for 1 and then pass. Matt starts his turn off with the Plains, then he'll tap for 4 to cast a Master of Keys X's 2. The One Ring, Heliod, and 2 lands are milled. The turn is then passed to Seth, and he starts off with a Waterlogged Grove, then he'll cast Rashmi and pass. Caden will activate Yasmin on his end step, and exile Lelia, then he'll move to his turn and activate her again and exile what I think is Contest of Claws. He'll then cast the Lelia from exile, and slight mistake here, 13th Doctor says whenever you cast a spell from exile put a counter. Lelia is still on the stack, not on the battlefield, but Caden gives her the counter. He'll then move to combat and swing Lelia over at Seth for 3. He'll exile a Fellwar Stone and she'll go up to 4. Post-combat he'll cast said stone and put a counter on Rishkar. Then he'll cast a Sword of Forged Frontier and then pass the turn. Everything with a counter will untap. Now on Sam's turn, he decides to go ahead and get rid of some graveyard shenanigans by paying 2 white to Lion Sash to exile Heliod and Hullbreaker Horror, and it gets 2 counters. After this, Sam will cast Nerd Rage onto the Lion Sash, and on ETB, he'll draw 2 cards. He'll then move to combat and swing Solemn Simulacrum over at Seth, who blocks with Rashmi, and when it dies, Sam will draw a card. He's very obviously digging for a land drop, but even after drawing 4 cards this turn, he doesn't find it. He'll pass to Matt. And Matt will start off with a Vault of Champions as land for turn. Then he'll pay 1 blue to cast Bottomless Pool. Unlock trigger will return Starfield Mystic to his hand, and then he'll pay 4 to overload a dam. Caden's the only one with a response. He'll activate Yasmin to exile a land, and then everything is destroyed. And by everything, I mean creatures. The turn is then passed to Seth, and he'll start off with a Frantic Search, so he'll draw 2, discard Negate and March of Swirling Mists, and then untap 3 lands. He'll then play a Command Tower, and then cast Seedborn Muse, and pass to Caden, who plays that land from exile. It's a Thundering Fall, so he'll surveil. It stays on top. He'll then cast the Flux. Wow, there's 1 creature on board with 4 toughness, and that does 4 damage to any creature. But control player has Arcane Denial, so it is countered. Caden will then just cast Arcane Signet and pass to Sam. On Sam's upkeep, Seth will draw 1 card and Caden draws 2. Sam then says he does have a way to deal with the Seedborn Muse, but he doesn't know if he should. Caden and Matt are able to convince him though by saying the longer the control player has it, the worse of a spot we're all in. So Sam will tap for 3 and Void Rend it. Can't be countered. Nice. I was there in person. I got to witness Seth glance at the discarded March of Swirling Mist and sigh. So yeah, there's nothing he can do about it, so Seedborn Muse is destroyed. After this, Sam casts a Nyxborn Unicorn and passes it to Matt, who just taps for 3 and casts both Starfield Mystic and Esper Sentinel. Seth decides to respond to the Sentinel by casting Factor Fiction. Target is Caden, and revealed cards are Brazen Borrower, Rampant Growth, Sylvan Library, Treasure Cruise, and Sprout Swarm. A really interesting 5 cards. Caden splits them up with Sylvan Library and Sprout Swarm in one pile, and the other 3 in the other pile. And Seth takes Sylvan Library and Sprout Swarm. And then we'll move to Seth's turn. He'll start off with a Simic Signet, then he'll cast Sylvan Library and pass to Caden. Oh, and I forgot to mention he did not pay the 1. Caden starts off with a Storm-Carved Coast, then he'll cast Charred Foyer, and he does pay the 1. After this, he'll cast a Nature's Lore, and this will find him a commercial district, and he'll surveil. This puts Delighted Halfling to the graveyard. He'll then pass the turn to Sam, who starts off with a Prismatic Vista. He'll then tap for 5 and cast Arna Kinnerud, and then fetch with his Prismatic Vista for an island and pass to Matt. He forgets to pay the life, though. Matt will start his turn off with a Rafine's Tower, and then he'll cast a Demon of Fate's Design. Seth responds to this with a Planner Genesis, 1 not paid. So he'll look at the top 4 of his library, and he chooses to not put a land in, he'll put a non-land to his hand. Then the demon resolves, and using its pay life ability, Matt is able to cast Soaring Lightbringer for 5 life. He'll then attempt to move to combat, but Seth stays in first main to cast Force of Vigor, pitching Sprout Swarm, and he'll hit both the demon and the Lightbringer. 2 1/1 counters are put on the Mystic because of this, and for his transgressions, Seth must take 5 in the combat step, and then the turn is passed to Seth. No life is paid to Sylvan Library. And then on his first main, he'll cast a Cultivate, and he does pay the 1. Cultivate finds him a forest to the battlefield tapped and an island to hand, which he plays as land for turn. And then he'll pass. Caden's turn starts off with Charred Foyer, exiling a Misty Rainforest on upkeep. He'll obviously play that as land for turn. Then he'll recast the 13th Doctor. After this, he fetches for an untapped Breeding Pool, and then casts Loot, the key to everything. Loot gets forged and frontiered, and then the turn is passed to Sam, who starts off with a Morphic Pool. He'll then cast Alela, and then enchant Arna with Combat Research, and he does pay the 1. There's an Alela trigger that makes a 1/1 flyer, and then it resolves. Sam will then move to combat and swing Arna over at Caden. There's an attack trigger that makes an additional Combat Research, and then Caden takes 7 Commander, and Sam will draw 2 cards. Then the turn is passed to Matt, and he decides to just slam a Bolus's Citadel. And he just starts casting stuff off the top of his library, starting with Azorius Signet, then a Mesa Enchantress, then Enduring Curiosity, draw trigger, and then Exquisite Blood, another draw trigger. Next is Thought Vessel, then Overlord of the Balemerc. Careful, Matt, you're getting pretty low now. There's a draw trigger, and then an ETB trigger. He'll mill 4 and return Master of Keys to his hand. After this, he'll pay 2 life to cast the Adventurer Virtue of Persistence on Sam's Unicorn. It's life neutral. After this, he'll pay 3 life to cast his other Heliod. This one's the Sun Crowned. Then he'll play Minas Tirith as land for turn. And then Matt will move to combat. He'll pay 2 mana into Heliod to give Starfield Mystic lifelink, and then he'll swing it and Esper Sentinel over at Seth again. So Seth will take 5, and Matt will gain 4 back. And then from Seth taking a total of 5 damage, Matt will gain a total of 5 life off of Exquisite Blood. Heliod also will get a total of 3 triggers, 2 from Exquisite Blood and 1 from lifelink, and he puts all 3 counters on Esper Sentinel. And then the turn is passed to Seth. He's got a Sylvan Library trigger, and he doesn't pay any life, and then he'll play Rejuvenating Springs. After this, he'll cast Rashmi again, then pass the turn to Caden. He'll exile Kami of Whispered Hopes to his room, and then Rhystic Study, Ragavan, and Mox Tantalite to loot. Caden will then cast the Rhystic Study, and an Esper Sentinel trigger goes on the stack. Matt figures Caden probably isn't going to pay the 4, so he decides to go ahead and cast the top card of his library by paying 3 life. It's Teferi's Protection. Seth decides to respond to this by reality shifting away Heliod. He knows there's a Ballista in there somewhere. He doesn't pay 4, and honestly, for the record, there's going to be a lot of do you pay triggers going on the stack. From now on, I'm just going to let you guys know if they are paid for, 'cause I'm lazy. And Rashmi trigger reveals Force of Negation, and it goes to hand. Seth decides to go ahead and cast it for free by pitching Blue Sun Zenith to counter and exile the Teferi's Protection. Finally, we get back to the Rhystic Study, where Caden remembers his 13th Doctor trigger, and he puts a counter on loot, and then the Rhystic Study will resolve. After this, Caden will cast Expressive Iteration, and Tlinkali Hunter is exiled off of this. After this, he's going to pay 6 mana into his room to unlock Warped Space. This will let him cast a spell from exile for free, and it's going to be that Tlinkali Hunter. Doctor counter goes on Loot again, and then he'll play a Mountain and cast Ragavan and put a counter on the Doctor. Caden will then move to combat, and he hits Seth for 5 with Loot. And upon connecting, he'll exile the top 2 cards of his library, and he can play an extra land. These 2 cards are Elvish Mystic and Fathom Mage. And he's not used the free Tlinkali Hunter cast yet, so he'll use that to cast the Fathom Mage. And the Hunter gets the counter. Caden will then pass the turn and untap creatures with counters. Now on to Sam's turn, where he'll just drop a casual All That Glitters, and he'll only pay for Rhystic Study. Sam will then play a Nesting Grounds, and then he remembers he should get an extra fairy. All That Glitters is then followed up by Steel of the Godhead, another fairy trigger, and he pays for Study again. Then Sam moves to combat and swings Arna over at Matt. He copies all the non-token auras attached to Arna. Matt's got no responses, so after some quick maths, Sam counts out 26 commander damage. So yeah, Matt is extremely dead, and Sam gets to draw 3 cards off of his combat researches, and then he'll pass the turn to Seth, who doesn't pay life to library again, and then he'll cast Archmage Emeritus. Rashmi reveals Kodama's Reach, which he will cast for free, and this will find him 2 islands, one he'll play as land for turn. And then the turn is passed to Caden. On upkeep, his Foyer will exile Faldorn, and then Loot will exile Chandra Torch of Defiance, Search for Tomorrow, and Frontier Bivouac. After this, Caden will slam a Keeper of Secrets. That's pretty good. Then, using Warp Space, Caden will cast Chandra Torch of Defiance for free. 4 damage is dealt to Sam, and then a 1/1 counter is put on Fathom Mage, and Caden will also remember the Evolve trigger from Fathom Mage, so he'll draw 2. Chandra is then upticked, and this hits Creative Technique, and then Caden will cast Jessica's Will, choosing both modes. Sam is the target, so he'll exile the top 3 and float 7 mana. This hits Training Center, Cyclonic Rift, and Fibblethip Lost on the Range. Training Center is played as land for turn, then using 6 of the floating red, and then tapping for a blue, Caden will overload the Cyclonic Rift. Before it resolves, 13th Doctor puts another counter on Fathom Mage, and he'll draw a card. Then Keeper of Secrets deals 2 damage to Sam. Then Seth will respond to the Cyclonic Rift with a Torrential Gearhulk. Rashmi trigger hits 3 visits, which is cast for free, which also triggers the Archmage. 3 visits goes and finds a tapped Breeding Pool. Then finally the Gearhulk will resolve, and Seth decides instead of countering the Sea Rift, he A, wants Gearhulk back in his hand, and B, wants the card advantage from a Factor Fiction, which is what he chooses. So he'll cast and exile it, and hit Tashana's Tidebinder, Fabled Passage, Bark Channel Pathway, a Forest, and Oko Thief of Crowns, and his target is Caden. TLDR, Seth gets only Oko to his hand. Then the Sea Rift will resolve. After this, Caden will Seek the Beast. This exiles Rockfall Vale and Etali, and he can play those till the end of his next turn. He'll then cast the Questing Druid, and Sam will take 2, and Keeper of Secrets gets the counter this time. Caden will then move to combat, and everything that can will be turned sideways over at Sam, for a total of 29 damage. Couple connect triggers, Ragavan will make Caden a treasure, and Sam exiles a land, and then the sword will exile, I don't know what the bottom card is, but the top one is an Apex Devastator. Oh, it's a Heroic Intervention. Anyways, Tlinkali Hunter's ability has not been used this turn, so Caden casts Apex Devastator for free, and Sam takes 10. Ragavan gets the counter, and it's time for Quadruple Cascade. First one's Professional Facebreaker, Sam takes 3. Second one is Innkeeper's Talent, Sam takes 2. And Caden remembers his counters. Questing Druid gets the first one, and then Professional Facebreaker gets the one off the talent. Wild Wasteland is the next cascade, so Sam takes 3, and then Caden remembers that Questing Druid should have 2 more counters from its own ability, and it gets an additional one from that cast, and then the last one is Ozolith. Oh, triggers, whatever. Yeah, this board state is getting crazy. I'm honestly having a really hard time following it myself. Anyways, Caden will pass the turn and untap everything. Hopefully he did stuff right. If a few extra counters got missed or added, I don't really think that matters that much. Anyways, now on Sam's turn, he decides to cast a 3 steps ahead to try to dig for a board wipe. He'll draw 2 and discard 1, and he does pay the 1. He'll then tap for 4 and cast Requisition Raid. He'll destroy Rhystic Study, Sword of Fortune Frontier, and he'll give all of Caden's creatures a counter, because why not at this point? And then the turn is passed to Seth. He'll cast Torrential Gearhulk again to cast Frantic Search for free from his graveyard. So he'll draw 2, discard 2, and remember to untap his 3 lands here in a second. After this he'll cast Consider, and this surveils Mystic Sanctuary to the graveyard, and he'll draw a card. Then he'll cast Growth Spiral to draw another card, and then put a forest in, and then he'll cast a Wilderness Reclamation. Seth will then pass the turn and untap all of his lands on end step. Sam and Seth both say they're pretty much F6, so Caden exiles the cards on his upkeep and then just moves straight to combat and swings for more than lethal on both of them. That makes Caden, the Doctor, and Yasmin the winners. Congratulations! Alright everybody, we are at the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. This video was actually recorded during MagicCon Vegas, so we were happy to be able to get it out for you. We also had a great time meeting a few of you. Anyways, if you enjoyed it, let us know what you thought down in the comments below, and while you're down there, check out all the links, and like and subscribe if you haven't already. Anyways, that's enough out of me for today. I hope you all have a smooth day.